And I guess some of the music I was playing in the background got copyrighted. Yeah, so that's why that one didn't post. Awesome. Yeah, we're starting 2 full reads. Yeah, someone really likes book 1, Columbia University, The Wisdom of the East. So we're going to start a full read on that one. And then also with the Christian prayer, the Liturgy of the Hours. We'll see how long it takes us to do a full read on those two. Yeah, these were written in 1925, but some versions go back to the 1800s. 1896, 1902, 1913, 1917 by University Associates Incorporated, and 1928, these, not 25, 28, by Columbia University Press. Yeah, it's a great one. Okay, table of contents, introduction. And we have our cocoa tea. Cheers. Nice dark chocolate with the Irish and Equator tea combo. It's really good. Alright, introduction, Book 1, Columbia University, The Wisdom of the East. It is not easy, even if possible, to say anything new about literature. Criticism, exposition, and analysis have long since exhausted themselves, and that which has stood their test has thereby become classic. Different epochs, different languages, and different civilizations have found varied modes of expression in literature for their reflection, their emotion, and their aspiration. To gather together representative selections of these is no slight or easy task, but when accomplished, it is a task that matters mightily for those who, not themselves scholars or masters of several languages, are seriously bent upon reading the best that has been said and written in the world, and upon bringing themselves under its influence. The Columbia University course in literature attempts precisely this. It offers in reasonably brief compass a survey of interpretation of which is most characteristic in the literature of the world, the material chosen being arranged in chronological order according to the nations that have produced it. From these selections, the reader should be able to gain a clear idea of the style and distinctive quality of those writers whose work endures. From the introductory essay, the reader will be given a viewpoint from which the selections that follow may best be understood and appreciated, and may come to know something of the author and the reasons that have led to the continuing repute of his work. The general introductions to the largest group of literary work will present to the reader those fundamental conditions of life, of thought, and of religious economic experience that have both shaped the literary expression of any given age, and also made these literary expressions continuous from the time when literature began to the present day. We were at the fair. It's a beautiful day for it. Oh, they look like they're having so much fun. That's awesome. Yeah, and thank you. I got your so far work on the pewter and petunia combo, and I saw the brass leaves you added in the bottom. They're kind of hidden in there. I like how you didn't forget about the fall incorporation. Awesome. When literature began to the present day. Riverside disposal. Taking out the garbage. No book and no series of books can contain all that one should know or all that one might well hope to read, but a collection of wisely made selections of what is best can serve a purpose which is very real and very practical. A work, what is best, can serve a purpose which is a work that is classic, when really grasped and appreciated, becomes not only a friend but a companion. I like those sentences. No book and no series of books can contain all that one should know or all that one might well hope to read, but a collection of wisely made selections of what is best can serve a purpose which is very real and very practical. A work that is classic, when really grasped and appreciated, becomes not only a friend but a companion. One wishes for its association, one wishes for its society, and turns to it at every opportunity. In particular, is this true of great poetry, of great oratory, and of great historical presentation and exposition? Who could ever tire of the Odyssey or the Aeneid or the Divine Comedy of Hamlet or of Faust? But there are lines and passages in Sophocles, in Horace, in Molière, in Milton, in Bryan, in Shelley, in Wordsworth, and in Browning that will last as long as life itself. Imagine anyone of intelligence not reveling in the stately oratory of Demosthenes or of Cicero, or in the suburb eloquence of Bossuet, of Mirabeau, of Burke, or of Webster. There are parts of Herodotus, of Thucydides, of Tacitus, of Froissart, I know I'm not pronouncing these right, and of Montesquieu, of which one can never grow weary, and the splendid flow of Macaulay's style is quite as much literature as history. To know and to love these an essential element of liberal education, it would be difficult to overestimate the importance of literature as a unifying force within nations and as a unifying force between nations. Science speaks no single language and therefore may quickly bind together all those whom its influence reaches. Science speaks no single language and therefore may quickly bind together all those whom its influence reaches. Literature uses various tongues, but its spirit is one and the same. The thought, the emotion, the aspiration which it expresses and reveals are common to all humanity. To approach an understanding of genuine literature and to gain an appreciation of it and the comfort and satisfaction which that understanding and appreciation bring is to go very far and indeed toward making life worth living. Signed by someone with a great signature, Columbia University, 27th of October, 1927. Yeah, the science that speaks with no single language. Yeah, there's no regard really to creed, yeah? The application applies to all. That's science, yeah, when it applies to human life, I guess. Life itself. The tree. No, you're right. It has no regard to creed, really, does it? Someone else just said, neither does the Mack truck that's about to hit you. True that, man. I heard that. Sorry. Literature and civilization. Literature is one of the oldest, one of the most continuous, as the first section, literature and civilization. We'll try to get through the first section here. Literature and civilization. Literature is one of the oldest, one of the most continuous, and one of the most important of man's activities. It began shortly after he had learned to speak, and long before he had learned to write. From that time to the present, it is an interesting statement. It began shortly after he had learned to speak, and long before he had learned to write. Literature. So what do they mean by literature? If it was long before he learned to write, but after he learned to speak. Spoken word expression. Yeah, it's really amazing when you think about that, for sure. From that time to the present, its course has been unceasing from generation to generation and people to people. It has never been more highly esteemed than today, and it engages a larger proportion of the time and energy of more human beings than ever before. As soon as man began to find words for things, he began also to strive to put some part of his experience and ideas into words that should be memorable. No tribe is so primitive that it has altogether failed to preserve proverbs, stories, or ritual, the beginnings of literature. From such origins, each settled people has gone on accumulating a treasury of poetry and history to be guarded jealously and preserved for its descendants. The greatest empires, the most progressive nations that the world has known, have cherished their literatures as among their proudest traditions and their best gifts to humanity. Nothing could be more absurd than the vulgar error that literature is merely decorative, ornamental, genteel, unessential. On the contrary, it is a fundamental element and a chief index of the advance of civilization which it records. Man has been described as a tool-using animal. His most important tool is language. The lasting product of that marvelous mechanism is literature. For thousands of years, he has been creating this product, weaving into its knowledge and his dreams, and proving old and inventing new patterns, discarding what becomes worn and faded, treasuring the best. Out of the experience of this life, he has created another life, of the imagination, a world that mirrors the real world, that records history, that depicts the ways of mortal man, and yet is free from the limits of time and space and reality. Open a book and you may enter this world to sing with Homer or reason with Socrates. Open a book and you have closed the door on the life of your daily experience and are living anew the most marvelous imaginings of the race. Here is preserved the best that has been thought and said, the aspirations of men of all time for a more abundant life. Literature has become very complex. The song, story, and ritual of primitive man have become a multitude of varying and complicated forms. Certain of these have become traditional, and the models and methods of some great creative period, like that of the Greeks, continue to influence the artistic practice for centuries. Thus, the drama, in spite of many changes, has maintained its form, and we can compare the tragedies of Mr. Eugene O'Neill with those of Ibsen or Racine or Otway or Shakespeare or Euphrates. Another basis of comparison of methods of art may be found in certain subjects which repeat themselves. For example, stories of the gods or mythologies have formed a basis of much of the great poetry of different peoples. But while any attempt to define and classify literature may prove useful and convenient, it is sure to be narrow and one-sided. It may be put the emphasis on the more imaginative and fanciful kinds, and forget that philosophy and history make a large portion of the literature of the past, and that encyclopedias and newspapers play a part in making the literature of today. Or such analysis may stress the traditional literary art and forget that great books are often produced in violation of all artistic tradition. One of the immortal books of the Middle Ages is The Travels of Marco Polo, dictated by a Venetian gentleman while in prison, taken down in faulty French by a fellow prisoner without any trace of literary art. Another immortal book is Chaucer's prologue of the Canterbury Tales, written by a highly educated Englishman who had learned much from French and Italian poets and formed a very skillful and conscious poetic method of his own. How shall we compare the two books? Chaucer's is immeasurably greater, has a work of traditional yet original art, but Marco Polo's crude narrative of fact is perhaps as sure of immorality. Men preserve as literature what they continue to care for, what remains interesting and significant. What they preserve is not always noble or exalting. Literature does not always observe the standards of morality any more than it always observes those of artistic excellence. Into it go man's spiritual desolations as well as spiritual triumphs, economic struggles as well as religious idealisms, his adventures as well as his meditations. It may be light-hearted and mocking as well as sober and instructive. It may be immoral or even indecent. Literature is scarcely less varied than the life that it mirrors. The imagination serves no one master for long, yet in the main, through centuries, the literary imagination has been guided by the ideals of literary excellence and of moral or social instruction. It seeks to enlarge knowledge, to teach, to influence conduct, and conduct meaning behavior, to teach, to influence conduct, and it seeks to make words into rhymes and rhythms, images, patterns that will delight the eye and the ear and the mind. This dual process has been expressed in many phrases: the instruct and to please, to edify and to delight, to give reality and joy. The vast and manifold world of the imagination that literature has created has been for the pleasure of men in this real world below, but it has also been intended for their instruction. The greatest books have gained immortality through their underlying ministrations to man's zeal for wisdom and beauty. This immortality distinguishes a work of literature from a work in certain other. This immortality distinguishes a work of literature from a work in certain other of man's great and continuous enterprises, such as law, government, or science. Law, government, and science. I like that trinity. Yeah, law, government, and science class. It almost seems like a conundrum before you even walk through the door. How could you even? They should be in the same classroom or church, whatever you want to call it. I'm in church right now. Church is in session. I can get leaky sometimes. Especially when like a lot of different emotions are coming and going, which is almost always. You know, my nose has been running since 1986. It's always clear. You know, I haven't had any color in my discharge really for decades. Yeah, you know how sometimes you get like snot and stuff, it might look a little green or yellow? Has never happened in decades. Well, when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme in 2006, I did a nice cleanse, a vaccination detox. I learned all about that stuff. It was really very interesting, amazing, wonderful, and scary all at the same time. It's like a roller coaster ride. But yeah, you know, that happens, emotions and stuff, like palms get sweaty, or you might blush or get palpitations. You might cry or sweat, something, anything, yeah. So some just will get a little bit of a runny nose sometimes when dealing with a lot of different emotions or chemical regulation. It's good, it means your system's working the way it should. No, we don't want to take anything to stop our nose from running. We want our body to run smoothly. We don't want to, what do they call that? Not hinder, not mask. Block. Yeah, why create a blockage? And then you get buildups. Or maybe you want to get a buildup sometimes. Tilt our head back, maybe. Let it just all go to our heads. Law, government, or science. That'd be a cool class. The accomplishment of one man in law or science lives not by itself, but merges in the works of successors. The poem or history may also be imitated and thus become the ancestor of many other poems and histories, as have the Aeneid. Do you know why do they put that kind of A thing before the E? Do you see what I mean there? Why do they do this? Has have the Aeneid of Virgil and the history of Thucydides, history of Thucydides, yet they still have in themselves fresh sources of delight and profit, now as when they were first written. In this respect, literature is like other of what we call the fine arts, music, painting, sculpture, and architecture, in which the creation of the individual artist may outlive over time. In which the creation of the individual artist may outlive time. What did I say, over time? That's funny, one of those Freudian slips, if you will. Perhaps, however, literature offers the most impressive opportunity for the expression of the individual and for the influencing of his fellow men. The poets early learned to boast that they could, in their verses, erect a monument for a patron more enduring than marble or bronze. Colors fade, temples crumble, empires vanish, but words endure. No other art has succeeded and has the art of words in taking the sympathies and thoughts of one man and making them clear and significant to many others. Literature is in part the full expression of great men, of Plato and Sophocles, Dante and Saussure, Moliere and Shakespeare, Goethe and Tolstoy. We listen again to their beautiful voices. We wonder at their art. We sit at their feet to learn their teachings. Through them we renew our faith, and in the greatness of man and the glory of his pilgrimage on earth. The teacher cannot teach without pupils. The poet's song is lost if no one listens to it. Literature must have an audience as well as creators, readers as well as writers. Indeed, a book repeats itself in each new reader. The audience from whom a book was intended may help to determine its character. Was it written for a royal patron? For fashionable and high-bred ladies? For the brothers of a monastery? For the theater? Or for the many thousand public of today? In some cases, the audience may be of interest scarcely less than the book itself. Take, for example, the writings of the American colonial period. Here, to a stripped land along the seacoast, our ancestors from the nations of Western Europe had come as prisoners, facing hardship and privation, building their homes on a new continent. Slowly but surely, they transplanted the old civilization to the new world. How did they live? What did they write? What manner of men were they? We study the history of their schools, their churches, their governments, even of their carpentry and pottery, and especially we study the books that they wrote and read, not so much because of direct benefit to ourselves, but in order that we may know them. A book opens to us not only the mind of its creator, but also the life and the spirit of its age. We find its economics, politics, religion, daily habits, and intellectual exercises are revealed. Though we may study the past in many ways, we cannot study it intelligently without the aid of literature. Books are constantly reviewing for us the past, and in a true sense, making that life a part of our own. When we say that a writer has humanity, we mean both that he deals vividly with a large range of life and also that he reaches in us, his readers, a wide range of sympathy and understanding for our fellow humans. Two mechanical devices have been of the greatest importance in enlarging this human appeal of literature: the inventions of writing and printing. Writing made possible the accumulation and preservation of literature in quantity and its circulation among a considerable body of educated readers. The invention of printing made literature accessible to everyone and reading an occupation for the millions. The spoken word, to be sure, has not yet lost its power of making literature. A play is written to be spoken before an audience, as were the plays of Aeschylus and Aristophanes. A preacher may still swan men by his eloquence, as did Bossuet, or a political orator may influence the destiny of a nation, as did Cicero. But the play or sermon or oration today soon reaches in print an audience far greater than that which could assemble, within hearing of the speaker's voice. This constantly enlarged audience has proved one of the chief factors in shaping the development of modern literature. Up to the time of the invention of printing, literature in the main could reach only the few educated persons. It represented a selected class, a very small proportion of the total population. Even after the printing press, we were turning out books in abundance. The reading class was still very small. It was not thought worthwhile to collect Shakespeare's play in a volume until 7 years after his death. Even as late as a century ago, the novels of Walter Scott, which were read by everyone who read anything at all, sold under just 100,000 copies for the most successful. Today, a popular novel in serial publication in book form and in reissue in the daily papers may be read by millions of persons within a year of its appearance. The orator or poet or historian or dramatist may speak of the world, the whole world, and almost in an instant the minds of millions of readers may be echoing and re-echoing his words. Amazing, and you fast forward to today's time, millions could be listening in the live, right? And days go by and it gets millions of views. Incredible. Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming when you kind of encompass all of that. Yeah, it is. In the most civilized country, the demand of the public for reading matter has become prodigious, 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 has become prodigious. It is met by newspapers, magazines, new books of every description, reprints of old books by selections, anthologies by libraries, by every possible device to satisfy this ever-increasing demand for something to read. In consequence, each reader may make his choice from a multitude of offerings, and he may make his choice between hasty or careful reading, between what is ephemeral, 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 between what is ephemeral and what is lasting in value, between the new and the old. He may choose what is being read by millions of other persons at the same moment, or he may choose what has been read by the elect of the ages. No one can or should neglect the offerings of the moment. In order to profit from the past, it is not necessary to condemn the present. The literature of the present performs an incalculable service in binding together and feeling and understanding the millions, just as the literature preserved from preceding generations does a great service in binding our hearts and minds to those of the past. But it is scarcely necessary to indicate the appeal that the literature of the past has upon any man or woman. It is selected, it has been winnowed and chosen from century to century. It has been winnowed and chosen from century to century. It represents the greatest masters of human speech. It presents a tradition of workmanship, of literary excellence, of artistic mastery on which all subsequent literature must depend. It reveals the amazing history of man's struggle and growth. It is a record of civilization. Conservatives are always fearful that the present will lose hold on its virtues of the past. Revolutionaries often demand that we cut loose from its tutelage. The fear of the one party and the demand of the other are alike impossible of realization in any sweeping measure. The past is always with us, and in the last century or so, men have been studying it, and understanding it and valuing it as never before. And they have been studying the past of the whole world. A little more than 100 years ago, the Sanskrit poems and the writings of Confucius were as unknown to the West as was the history and literature of Europe to the East. Now, American tourists by the thousands journey across the earth to view the Taj Mahal, and Shakespeare is taught in the schools of China and Japan. The literature of the past is helping us to realize that we are the citizens of the world. The modern man is intensely interested in the past. There is little danger that the masterpieces of the world's literature will be neglected by the present generation. Many now, as always, will be interested in little else but their personal occupations and cares. But as more men and women acquire liberty and leisure, more will find time for an interest in the larger issues of life, for science and history and literature. Especially will this be true in our own country. Our pioneering days, to be sure, are not over. We still have enormous material tasks to perform, wasteland to be reclaimed, physical resources to be developed and preserved, but we are acquiring wealth, leisure, and a sense of our relationship to the world at large. We are coming to know that great and difficult problems lie before us, which can be met only by a thorough knowledge of the past. We are feeling our place in the tradition of intellectual and imaginative endeavor, which has raised man from the earth and enabled him to survey the world with the head erect. We are intent on our own literature, both what we have made and what we are making, and we are interested in the literature of other nations and other times. The world has never known such an audience. Now, the average man can readily acquire all the knowledge of the past which Franklin or Jefferson or Hamilton possessed, and in addition may benefit from the enormous accomplishments of the last century. Now 100 million are living in comfort, with wealth widely distributed, with education universal, and with the books of knowledge open before them. Our nation is asking itself what is its purpose, its responsibilities, its hopes. Surely it will turn for guidance and courage to what man has already achieved in art and science, and surely no intelligent American will neglect the great literature of the world. A.H. Thorndike. And we'll pause there. The next section is Oriental literature. We'll start our next full read. I wanted to do a full read with this. It's a long book. The Divine Office, revised by decree of the Second Vatican Ecumensial Council and published by authority of Pope Paul. Christian Prayer, the Liturgy of the Hours. English translation prepared by the International Commission of English on the Liturgy. I don't know. I think Pope Paul V, maybe. Daughters of St. Paul editions, 1976. July 15th, 1976. Oh, let me read that part too. how to use the liturgy of the hours. You're welcome. Thank you. I'll get through some of it. Yeah, we might make some broccoli soup in a little bit. Yeah, those are good, aren't they? All right, how to use the liturgy of the hours. Number 1. The office of readings may be recited at any hour of the day, even during the night hours of the previous day, after evening prayer has been said. If the office of readings is said immediately before another hour of the office, then the appropriate hymn for that hour may be sung at the beginning of the office of readings. At the end of the office readings, the prayer and conclusion are omitted, and in the hour following the introductory verse, with the glory to the Father, is omitted. So this looks like it was a schedule for them to follow. Kind of like a school schedule, your itinerary. The celebration of the hours. Introduction. The first hour of the day, morning prayer or office of readings, begins with the invitatory, with the invitatory. Oh, like invitatory. Why don't they just say with the invites? Lord, open my lips with glory to the Father, and hallelujah. The antiphon with the invitatory psalm 95, 167, or 24 follows. The antiphon may be said first and then repeated after each strophe of the psalm. STROPHE. Again, more of the itinerary. We don't need to read that. Yeah, I guess we don't need to read any of it, really. Someone asked if we'd do a full read on this. Apostolic Constitution Promulgation, the Divine Office, revised by decree of the Second Vatican Ecumenical Council, Paul, Bishop, servant of the servants of God, for an everlasting memorial. The hymn of praise that is sung through all the ages in the heavenly places and was brought by the high priest, Christ Jesus, into this land of exile has been continued by the Church with constant fidelity over many centuries in a rich variety of forms. The liturgy of the hours gradually developed into the prayer of the local church, a prayer offered at regular intervals and in appointed places under the presidency of a priest. It was seen as a kind of necessary complement to the fullness of divine worship that is contained in the Eucharistic sacrifice, by means of which that worship might overflow to reach all the hours of daily life. The Book of the Divine Office, gradually enlarged by many additions in the course of time, became a suitable instrument for the sacred action for which it was designed. However, over the generations, quite a number of changes were introduced in the form of celebration, including the practice of individual recitation. It is not strange, therefore, that the breviary, as it was sometimes called, underwent many transformations, sometimes affecting the principles of its arrangements. The Council of Trent, unable, because of shortness of time, to complete the reform of the breviary, left this matter to the apostolic. See the Roman breviary, promulgated by the predecessor St. Pius IV in 1568. Achieved above all what was earnestly requested, the introduction of uniformity in the canonical prayer of the Latin Church after this uniformity had lapsed. read this section and then we'll pause there. Oh no, hold on. Oh, yes, okay. All right. Public and common prayer by the people of God is rightly considered to be among the primary duties of the church. From the very beginning, those who were baptized devoted themselves to the teaching of the apostles and to the community, to the breaking of the bread and to the prayers. Acts 2:42. The Acts of the Apostles give frequent testimony to the fact that the Christian community prayed with one accord. The witness of the early church teaches us that individual Christians devoted themselves to prayer at fixed times. Then, in different places, the custom soon grew of assigning special times to common prayer. For example, the last hour of the day, when evening draws on and the lamp is lighted, or the first hour when night draws to a close with the rising of the day star. In the course of time, others hours came to be sanctified by common prayer. These were seen by the fathers as foreshadowed in the Acts of the Apostles. There we read of the disciples gathered together at the third hour. The prince of the apostles went up on the housetop to pray about the sixth hour. Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the ninth hour. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. This kind of common prayer gradually took shape in the form of an ordered round of hours. This liturgy of the hours of divine office, enriched by readings, is principally a prayer of praise and petition. In fact, it is the prayer of the church with Christ and to Christ. The prayer of Christ. Christ, the intercessor with the Father. When he came to give men and women a share in God's life, the word proceeding from the Father has the splendor of his glory. Christ Jesus, the high priest of the new and eternal covenant, took our human nature and introduced into the world of our exile that hymn of praise which is sung in the heavenly places throughout all ages. From then on, the praise of God wells up from the heart of Christ in human words of adoration, propitiation, and intercession, propitiation, and intercession presented to the Father by the head of the new humanity, the mediator between God and mankind, in the name of all and for the good of all. In his goodness, the Son of God, who is one with his Father, and who said on entering the world, "Here I am, I come, God, to do your will," has left us testimony to his own prayer. The Gospels very frequently show us Christ at prayer when his mission is revealed by the Father before he calls the apostles, when he blesses God at the multiplication of the loaves, when he is transfigured on the mountain, when he heals the deaf mute, when he raises Lazarus before he asks for Peter's confession of faith, when he teaches the disciples how to pray, when the disciples return from their mission, when he blesses the little children, when he prays for Peter. The work of each day was closely bound up with his prayer, indeed, flowed out from it. He would retire into the desert or into the hills to pray, rising very early and spreading the night as far as the fourth watch in prayer to God. We are right in believing that he took part in public prayers in the synagogues which he entered on the Sabbath, as his custom was, and in the temple when he called a house of prayer, as well as in the private prayers which devout Israelites could recite regularly every day. He used the traditional blessings of God at meals. This is expressly mentioned in connection with the multiplication of the loaves, the Last Supper, the meal at Emmaus. He also joined with the disciples in a hymn of praise. To the very end of his life and his passion was approaching. At the Last Supper, in the agony of the garden, and on the cross, the divine teacher showed us that prayer was the soul of his messianic ministry and paschal death. In the days of his life on earth, he offered up prayers and entreaties with loud cries and tears to the one who could deliver him out of death, and because of his reverent attitude, his prayer was heard. Hebrews 5:7. By a single offering on the altar of the cross, he has made perfect forever those who are being sanctified. Hebrews 10:14. Raised from the dead, he is alive forever and makes intercession for us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's one of our bookmarks here. I'll use a blue one.
Yes, thank you.
You're up, out, up, down, up, out, up, down, and out. No, not in Beverly Hills. Oh yeah, down and out in Beverly Hills. Okay. Anyone ever tell you you're like a walking advertisement? It's the only thing about you. I can't dance. Only thing about me is the way.
That's good. All right, we'll do some more reading in a little bit.
I know we said we'd start those first 2 full reads. We'll see how long it takes us to do those. Probably at least a few days.
This book's pretty long.
And this is over 1,000 pages, you know. It's almost, let's see, 1,000. Let's see. That's the guide. Last page, 1,741. You want me to read the last one? Okay. Prayer to the Virgin Mary. Mary, Holy Virgin Mother, I have received your Son, Jesus Christ. With love you became his mother, gave birth to him, nursed him, and helped him grow to manhood. With love I return him to you to hold once more, to love with all your heart, and to offer to the Holy Trinity as our supreme act of worship, for your honor and for the good of all your pilgrim brothers and sisters. Mother, ask God to forgive my sins and to help me serve him more faithfully. Keep me true to Christ until death, and let me come to praise him with you forever and ever. Amen. hopefully.
I can't even begin to tell you the pain and the torment over the years with what they've been doing here with our children and other people in the community. Many have been killed and killed themselves and disappeared. It's very scary to us, and we really do hope the proper authorities step forward and help our children in the hands of these sick, murderous pedophiles. These are facts. Hopefully. Much love, health, and peace to you. You're welcome. Yes, thank you. Look at that beautiful sun. We are at, hold on, I can't see it, the sun like that, 55. Oh, that's not funny. Alrighty then. Much love, health, and peace.